Welcome back to Review Crew. I'm Tim.
And I'm Laura, and today we're going to be reviewing Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's the trailer.
For nearly 3,000 years, man has searched for the lost Ark of the Covenant.
The Bible speaks of the Ark leveling mountains and laying waste to entire regions. Not something to be taken lightly. No one knows its secrets.
Jones, do you realize what the Ark is? It's a transmitter. It's a radio for speaking to God.
An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible.
The Ark, if it is their Eternis, then it is something that man was not meant to disturb.
It is protected by forces beyond imagination. It is desired above all treasures on earth by those who are good,
Trust me.
and those who are evil.
I'll tell you everything.
Yes, I know you will.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Let her go.
We have no time. If you still want the Ark, it is being loaded onto a truck for Cairo.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. A film from Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
All right, Tim, so I'm sure you've seen this before, but what was it like watching it this time? What are your first thoughts?
Yeah, first thoughts. Last time I saw this movie, was back in the early stages of the pandemic. So, I watched it, and then, so it's been like a year now. And I loved it every bit as much as I've loved it every single time I've watched it. This is like one of my favorite movies, I think, like top 3. It's one of the movies I kind of like grew up with. And really kind of got me into movies. And, I watched it with my dad a bunch when I was a kid. And just watching it again, it always brings back that kind of, early magic when I was younger. And it's just like such a great film. So, I was super excited to watch it again.
Definitely. Same here. I watched it with my dad growing up, except I haven't seen it in so many years because when I was little, there were a few parts that just terrified me. So it was really exciting to watch it back as an adult and actually realize it's almost very campy, very corny, kind of funny to watch some of the special effects. And yeah, the Nazi's faces melting off did not get me as much this time. It did not terrify me as much as it did when I was little. But speaking of the effects of that, like, what is your favorite action sequence in this? Because there's so many fun sequences. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of my favorite parts about the movie, I think, is that like every action sequence is so like plot driven too. So there's always big stakes. A lot of big action movies nowadays, they kind of just have like this random action and it kind of just, feels a little like, like filler. But this movie keeps it consistent with the pace and with the action. And my favorite scene is the truck chase, where Indy is, he takes over the truck and he rams all the Nazis off the road. I think it's just, the action itself, the music involved, just the editing of it, I think it all works so well, and especially the stunt work too. Like, hats off to the stunt guys for that, especially when Indy's going under the truck on the whip. That's like my favorite stunt in the whole movie. I think that's awesome. What about you?
That I was actually going to say was my favorite scene as well. I really agree. It's all very choreographed, and I think similar, like in a lot of newer action movies, they move the camera so fast and they do all of these editing tricks so you can never actually see the action. but in Indiana Jones, like they want you to see everything he's doing and to see his thought process as everything happens. And oh my gosh, the one thing I would say is when he came out from under that truck and he had a few scratches on him, I can't imagine he would have gotten away with that. But for the fun of it, I loved it.
Yeah, there's a little suspense and disbelief there, but it's you're cheering for him. It's like, hey, there you go. He's up there.
Definitely. I'd say that, and then obviously the opening sequence is so incredibly iconic that people who have never even seen the movie know the idea of taking the idol and replacing it with a bag of sand as the giant ball drops and chases them out. I watch that and I literally feel like I'm watching it for the first time every time. It's so exciting. It's so fun. And I think you're right. Like the stakes are always really high with it.
Yeah, and especially that scene too, you mentioned the opening scene. I think that's such a great action scene itself, but it's also like just one of the best openings I've seen because I think it establishes Indy as a character like so well in just the first 10 minutes. So I was wondering like what are your thoughts on Indiana Jones as a character and how Harrison Ford portrays him and like how he compares to other like movie characters?
Definitely. I think watching it back too, especially in like a 2020s perspective, he's kind of just almost like an American cowboy. Like he's so cool, and I love that he's also a very smart character. He's obviously a professor, and I think sometimes a lot of other action movies, sometimes they glorify people who are just, really ignorant. I would say, I think, like I said, looking back on it from a 2020 perspective, his motives of stealing things from developing countries to sell to museums is, obviously very different, but it was a movie made in, the 80s, and I'm very curious with the remake to see if they're going to continue with that trend, and also with the idea of there being a female Indiana Jones. Would that change the character at all because it's such an inherently masculine, iconic character?
Yeah, definitely. I was hearing, I think it's Phoebe Waller-Bridge is going to be in the new movie, so I'm definitely curious to see how she, is fit into that universe and how she works with Indy and like if maybe there's a passing of the hat onto her, so that could be a really cool aspect of it. But yeah, Indy is just one of my favorite characters. It's that mix of spontaneous action with just the intelligent, he's seen it all. And I think he's just a great character. So I'm definitely excited to see what they do in future movies, like you said. But yeah, this movie just, established him so well.
Definitely. And when you're making remakes, you can never really forget how iconic these original movies were. And one thing I really appreciated was how funny the movie was, too, looking back. One of my favorite scenes of all time is they're in the market and the crowd parts, and there's a man wielding a sword, ready to fight, and Indiana Jones, instead of taking out a sword as well, just takes out his gun and shoots him down. That moment always brings a smile to my face. I don't know if you had another favorite comedic moment.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's the one that comes to mind, and I'm sure everyone's heard this 1,000 times if you're a fan of the movie, but it was improvised. Harrison Ford was he had dysentery, I'm pretty sure, and he was not feeling good, and he just talked to Spielberg. He's like, you know what, instead of doing this whole long fight action scene, let's just shoot the sucker. And Spielberg was like, you know what, let's do it. And so they did it, and now it's one of the most iconic moments in the film. So I think they really just, took it and ran with it, and there's a lot of good moments like that. Yeah, that one comes to mind. Honestly, the one where it's kind of towards the end, he's takes the Nazi in the naval base and he puts on the jacket and it's too small for him. That one, I don't know, that one just cracks me up every time. But yeah, you're right, there's so much comedy in it, and I think that blend of comedy and action is what makes the movie so interesting.
Right, and it keeps it exciting, and it's just something you want to keep watching, just not only because of the high stakes, but just because of how lovable the characters are. Speaking of which, Marion, watching it back, I didn't really remember her from when I was younger. But watching it back, she's such a fun and exciting character. I don't know if you had any thoughts on her.
Yeah, I love her. She's just a great, partner to Indy. They work so well together. And I read a scene from the script, and originally she was kind of a weaker character, but she became a stronger character when they actually shot the film. And I really appreciated that because it didn't feel at any point really like it was one had way more power over the other. They both brought what they brought to the table, and they were both super important characters.
Definitely. And I think one of the other things I love about it was the number of small characters that, take on so much weight throughout different parts of the journey. I forget his name, but the man with the monkey, and I believe when they're in Cairo. You know, I remember being so mad when I was little that the monkey was actually evil. But you almost grow attached to even the monkey. Like every character has a very interesting drive, and I think a lot of times in action movies, so many action movies just forget to give all of these minor characters actual motivation. And I thought it was really fun to watch. Did you have a favorite like minor character or even one of the villains?
Yeah, you know, just Tote, the German in the black suit, you know, who, I mean, that's another one of my comedic gags that I like is the, you know, the coat hanger, and then it turns out to just be, you know, the thing, and he hangs up his coat, and that's one of the best moments. So there are a lot of great minor characters, too, and I think that's what kind of makes this film series work so well.
Definitely, and even seeing him, I was able to appreciate a lot of other movies I've seen that I feel like reference his character a lot. So we'll definitely come back to this, but for now, we're going to take it to a commercial break.
Rules are about to be rewritten. At Syracuse University, we believe a changing world needs a new type of game changer. One who charts their own course, who is driven by purpose, who measures their success in impact, who lives what it means to be orange. Which is why our coursework is designed to do one thing: change the course of everything. Because now needs a new type of leader. Because now needs you.
All right, and welcome back to our discussion of Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Laura, I just wanted to ask you a question too. I think we kind of talked about how you were scared of like the Nazis' face melting and all that. So I think it's like really interesting, that makeup aspect, like that kind of behind the scenes and like the production value that like went into the movie. So kind of like, I mean, I know that I really enjoyed like all the makeup. I know it's kind of campy and stuff, but I think, you know, as a kid, like you mentioned, that is like the scariest effect when that Nazi's face just melts right off his skull. So what are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. I think the campiness actually really adds to it. It makes it a lot more, you know, fitting of the genre because it's a big, wild adventure. And so I think I really appreciated the amount of special effects and really practical effects that went into it. Like there was a lot of work with, like you said, the makeup behind the scenes, and even all of the like dead bodies when they pop out on spikes. They weren't trying to be anything, you know, hyper realistic, but it's still like when you're watching it that first time when you're little, it's scary because you know, I don't think we need to rely on really intense gore to enjoy something, you know. So watching it back now, that's definitely one thing I appreciated. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned the practical effects too, and that was something that really stuck out to me on this run especially. Kind of just, yeah, like on the spikes, like Sapitos on the spikes, and it's more kind of, it's not the goriest thing, it's like it's a kind of a brutal kill, but it's like more of the shock value kind of that comes with it, and it's just like the emotional, like the way it hits you. It's not really like, oh, that's disgusting. It's just like, oh, wow, that's a cool effect right there. So yeah, I think the effects really like contribute a lot to it, and it yeah, they use a good mix of, they know when they need to use CGI and kind of those special effects, but they really heavily rely on practical effects, which is something I always appreciate in a movie.
Definitely. And speaking of special effects, obviously there's that big scene at the end. You know, the light is chasing them through the room. And I think it's really interesting, the element of almost like magic and fantasy that they incorporate into it. And that does kind of continue throughout some of the other Indiana Jones movies. So how do you feel about Raiders of the Lost Ark compared to other Indiana Jones movies?
Yeah, so I think this one's my favorite of the series. I like all of them. Even Crystal Skull, you know, it's definitely weaker, but I still kind of enjoy it. But yeah, I think Raiders is just, you know, it's the one that started it all. It's got everything for me. It's got that great indie intro, plenty of great action. And you know, I just love the storyline of the Ark like the most, because it's just like you mentioned, the supernatural element to it, but like the whole time through it's kind of like, we're not sure if this Ark thing is actually real, and then that ending scene hits you hard because it's like, oh yeah, Oh yeah, it's real. So that is, I think, my favorite movie, and I think compared to the rest of them, although I still like them, this one will always hold a special place in my heart.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. So do you think then you'll see the new one when it comes out?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm so pumped for it. I'm glad that they're like, releasing pretty consistent news with it. Mads Mikkelsen added to the cast. So yeah, I'm just super excited to watch the movie and, see how it compares to the other ones.
Definitely. I don't know if it'll ever hold up to the original, but I've got a good feeling they're gonna do it justice.
Yes, definitely.
So that being said, will you continue to watch this? Like you said, you watched it earlier in the pandemic. Is it going to be a yearly watch for you? Are you going to keep watching that?
Yeah, no, I definitely. This isn't my last time watching the movie. I don't know. I might have to make it a yearly tradition. Yeah, I know that could be fun. But yeah, definitely, I plan on watching them. I'm sure I'll have a little marathon before the 5th one comes out, just in preparation.
So one thing that I also think makes this movie so iconic is the score. We all know the Indiana Jones theme song. It's running through my head right now. It's been stuck ever since I watched the movie. So how do you feel about the use of music in it?
Yeah, again, like you said, just fantastic. I think Spielberg and John Williams, that duo is just, they always come out and they always perform. Jaws, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, everything that they've done together is incredible. And especially this one, this is like one of my favorite scores, I think. Just that opening intro, yeah, the Raiders March, that's like one of my favorite pieces that I've ever listened to. So I think the music is actually, it really works well. Sometimes in action movies, it's not really something you usually think about. But I mean, this movie, it really took that and it ran with it. So I really enjoyed it.
Definitely. I definitely agree that the two of them are always great with these action movies where even in the quieter moments, the music really does play into the emotion of it. And it's, not overstated in a lot of moments, but it really does enhance the emotions of the plot. And then when everything becomes more intense and dramatic, that theme picks up and it just gets you excited. It makes you want to, jump in there with the characters. Definitely one of the things that I appreciate the most about this movie.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned, too, it kind of, like the emotions, it like pulls out those emotions too. I noticed on this watch, the Marion and Indy scene on the boat is really nice, and that music that plays in the background, I really like that this time. I usually don't focus on it because I'm so focused on more of the action-driven music, but this time I picked up on that and really appreciated it.
Definitely. I think they did a really good job of continuing music throughout without making it even the main focus. I think so many times all these sequences we see in modern movies have these big exciting songs, and it does make a really fun action sequence or even a simpler scene, but I think sometimes it can take away because we're so focused on the song and not the emotions in that moment, and to see them working hand in hand I think is always a really nice touch. All right, Tim, so if you had to give this movie a rating out of 10, what would you give it?
I think it's a 10 out of 10 for me, just because it's one of those top 3 favorites of mine. Just I can always watch it and I'm never bored. So I think just everything together, it just gets that perfect score.
Definitely. I think I would give it a 9 out of 10. I think a lot of it was just looking back. There are some, more social issues that bring up, but I think if I were to look at it in a vacuum and understanding it's a product of its time from the 80s, I think I would give it that 10 out of 10 because, like you said, it's just a fun movie you want to keep watching. All right. Well, we'll be right back after this. That's all for this week. If you want to follow more Review Crew content, go to the Review Crew Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Orange TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube.
Find the Review Q's podcast on Spotify or on our website at orangetvnetwork.syr.edu, where you can also find our blog and more OTN information. See you next week.